This is a video about checking your electrical item to make sure that it's safe. It's the first half of something called a PAT test, a portable appliance test, but it's actually the bit that anyone can do at home to just make sure that all the bits that you can see and the plug and the cable are all good and safe, and that way you can minimize risk in your house. So the first part of any visual inspection is the checking the plug. So in the case of this iron, which is what we're going to be visually inspecting today, we've got a plug here which is a completely encased plug. So there are a few different types. You have this one which is encased, or you have one that is like this, which actually you can get into. So we'll be getting into that shortly. There's also a third plug which is like this, and if you look at this plug, the difference between the previous two is that it doesn't have anything, it's got very smooth pins here, whereas both on this one you can see there's white here. This is called the insulation, and this insulation is so that when you put your fingers in like this to try and pull it out the wall, you don't accidentally touch them, say if you're a child or something like that. So you can get the insulation. Here's another example of the insulation. In this case it's black. So the first thing you want is that your plug has insulation, and in this case it does. The second is that we want to check the condition of the plug. So this one's great, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this plug, but for example this plug here, you'll see it's been cracked, so you wouldn't want to use that. I mean, if anyone stuck their hand in there, their finger in there, they would get, it wouldn't be good. So we would have to change the whole of this plug in because of that issue. So once you've checked that, you would also want to check the fuse. So every electrical appliance that you have has some information on it. So there's always a sticker that gives you the information that you need, and the most important thing that you need is how many watts of energy does it use. And in this case, irons, because it produces heat, it produces a lot of watts. So along that line there, you'll see it goes up to something like 2000 watts of power, and that means that it's drawing a lot of power through its cable, and it would need a fuse that would be able to handle a lot of power. For example, this is one of those little desk lights, and if you look at this desk light here, you'll see that the wattage there is only 20 watts. So really it doesn't need a lot of power. It's not drawing a lot of power to be able to create the light that it's using. So with fuses, you have three different types of fuses. You have the smallest fuse, which is a 3 amp fuse, which is always red. You have a 5 amp fuse, which is always black, and you have a 13 amp fuse, which is always brown. Anything that uses 700 watts or below uses those two fuses, the 5 amp and the 3 amp, and everything that uses more than 700 watts would use the 13 amp fuse. So in the case of this plug here, we know that this takes 2000 watts of power, which means it would need a 13 amp fuse. And you can actually look inside here and see that it's brown, and we know that brown is 13, whereas if it was red or black, it would be the wrong fuse inside, and you'd know to change it. A fuse in a plug like this, which is closed, you wouldn't be able to see. So the only thing you'd be able to do with this one is you would have to open it up. To do the visual inspection on a normal plug, like this one, you would need to look inside it. So I've already started unscrewing this. If you unscrew from the middle one only, the middle screw only, you can actually get into this inside of it, and you can see there that that's got a brown fuse. So brown 13 amp fuse. If it was connected to this iron, then that would be alright. So once you've got your plug open, you'll be able to see inside, and you'll be able to see the polarity of your wires. You need to make sure that the blue wire is on the left and the brown wire is on the right. And in the case of a plug that's actually got 3 cables inside, you'll see you've got the blue on the left, the brown on the right, and then you've also got, it's a green and yellow cable normally, which is the earth wire, and that always goes to the top there. So if they're in any way the wrong way around, then that would be really bad news and you'd want to correct them. There are a few more things to check once you've got your plug open. One is that the cable entry into the pins there is nice and tight, so you can take your screwdriver and just give a little turn on each of the points where the wire is going into the pins. The other is that there's a little cable grip here, you can see, and that's holding this cable in place. And so the sleeve is going all the way through there, and you want it to be all the way into your plug there. You don't want it to be hanging out. So here's a plug where the sleeve, you can see, is hanging out of the side. So that is not safe. You want it to be nice and snug all the way inside and gripped with this unit here. So once you've checked your plug to make sure that everything's okay and it's joined together okay over here, and you've put it back together if it's not this already sealed unit, then you want to check your cable. So if you use your fingers, you can just run your fingers along the cable like this, and they'll do the checking for you, and you'll be able to feel any imperfections. So here I've found an imperfection here, which is the cable's bulging out there. And if you see another example here, as I run my finger along, I can get caught, snagged on a piece of cabling there that's been cut. And in this case, you can actually see all the way through to the copper, so even more dangerous. So in the case of this and this, both would need a cable replaced. And then you would also want to check where the cable enters into the item. So often there's a sleeve here if it's an iron or a electrical strimmer or something like that in the garden. But if it's a fan, then it will just be going straight in. So there's lots of items where it just goes straight in, and you just want to make sure that that's sitting securely there. So the third and final part of the visual inspection is actually checking the appliance itself. You want to make sure that there's no cracks in the housing, that there's no bits that look like maybe they've melted because of overheating either inside or because someone's put something hot against it. You want to check if it's got metal, that there's no corrosion, so you don't want any chemicals to have leaked on it or anything like that. And also ventilation is quite important, not in the case of the iron because that doesn't have any ventilation, but this is a charger for a battery drill, and you can see these little slots in the back here, and that's so that the air can kind of flow in and out and keep it cool. So if those were covered, this would very likely overheat. And finally, it's checking the rating plate. So on this item here, this is the rating plate. On this here, the iron, you can see there's another rating plate. And we've got over here on this lamp, you can see another rating plate. And you just want to be able, this rating plate you can see a CE mark, which means approved by the European Union. You've got various different indicators as well as the wattage, which was important earlier. So you just want to make sure that your appliances got all of these items. And if after this you can say yes to everything that we've done, then you have a safe appliance, and at that point it's okay to plug it into the wall.